Has Netflix quietly turned romance into something darker, riskier, and harder to look away from? These are not just love stories, they are films about temptation, betrayal, obsession, power, and relationships that cross lines most people only whisper about. From polished period scandals to psychological thrillers and controversial international dramas, this list counts down 15 Netflix movies that feel seductive, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. But number one still divides audiences for a reason. Number 15, The Perfect Find, 2023. A career comeback sounds inspiring until Attraction walks into the office wearing the wrong last name. The Perfect Find looks glossy on the surface, with fashion shoots, polished rooms, and a woman trying to rebuild her reputation after a public fall. But underneath that romantic comedy shine is a sharper question. How much risk is too much when your heart starts choosing the one person who could destroy your second chance? Gabrielle Union plays Jenna, a fashion editor trying to prove she still belongs in an industry that worships youth, image, and relevance. Then she falls for a younger man who is not just charming, he is connected to her boss in the worst possible way. That gives the story its tension. It is not dangerous in the criminal sense. It is dangerous because one emotional mistake could cost her everything she fought to recover. Sweet, stylish, and quietly messy, this is romance with consequences. Number 14, Elisa and Marcella, 2019. Some love stories are whispered because the world was never ready to hear them out loud. Elisa and Marcella is not built like a typical steamy romance. It is slower, colder, more painful, and far more defiant. Set in early 20th century Spain, the film follows two women whose bond grows inside a society determined to erase them. That historical pressure makes every glance feel heavier, every private moment feel dangerous, and every decision feel like an act of rebellion. The black and white visuals give the movie a haunting, almost ghostly quality, as if the past itself is watching them. What makes the film compelling is not just the romance, but the cost of being seen. Their relationship becomes a fight against rules, religion, gossip, and fear. It is intimate, yes, but its real power comes from courage. Elisa and Marcella turns desire into resistance, and that makes it linger after the screen goes dark. Number 13, Ride or Die, 2021. This is not the kind of love story that asks for approval. It runs from the law and dares you to judge it. Ride or Die is intense, stylish, and emotionally unstable in the way only a psychological escape drama can be. The film follows Ray, a woman who commits a shocking act to help Nanae, a former love trapped in an abusive situation. From there, the story becomes a road movie soaked in guilt, devotion, fear, and unresolved longing. The tension is not just about whether they will get caught. It is about whether their bond is love, obsession, rescue, or destruction. That ambiguity is what makes the film hard to ignore. It never lets the viewer sit comfortably. One moment it feels romantic, the next it feels tragic, then dangerous, then strangely tender. Ride or Die is messy by design, a film about people who confuse freedom with escape. Number 12, Lust Stories, 2018. Behind closed doors, ordinary people often carry secrets louder than scandals. Lust Stories became such a conversation piece because it took Indian relationships, marriage, desire, loneliness, class pressure, and emotional dissatisfaction, and stripped away the polite surface. Instead of one story, the film gives 4 different perspectives, each directed by a major Indian filmmaker, and each focused on private needs people are usually told to hide. The power here is not in shock for the sake of shock. It is in how recognizable the discomfort feels. A teacher-student dynamic, a marriage with unspoken frustration, a domestic worker navigating power imbalance, and a woman stuck inside emotional silence. Each segment exposes how desire can reveal inequality, hypocrisy, and quiet sadness. That is why the anthology feels sharper than a simple romance film. Lust Stories is bold because it makes intimacy social, political, and personal all at once. Number 11, Madame Claude, 2021. Power does not always sit in offices, palaces, or government rooms. Sometimes it waits behind velvet curtains. Madame Claude takes viewers into the elite shadows of 1960s Paris, where beauty, influence, secrets, and control move through the same rooms. The film is based on the world of a powerful woman who operated near politicians, businessmen, and high society, turning private desire into a dangerous kind of currency. What makes the story fascinating is not just the scandalous setting, but the atmosphere of surveillance and leverage. Everyone wants something. Everyone hides something. And in that world, intimacy is rarely just personal. It becomes political. The movie has a cold, stylish quality that makes it feel less like fantasy and more like a warning about how power protects itself. Madame Claude is not simply about seduction. It is about access, manipulation, and the price of knowing too much. Number 10. Through My Window series, 2022 to 2024. Sometimes the most dangerous obsession begins with a view from across the street. Through My Window became one of Netflix's most talked about Spanish romance franchises because it understands the addictive pull of young love, fantasy, jealousy, and emotional chaos. The story begins with Raquel, a girl fascinated by her mysterious neighbor Ares. And what starts like a private crush slowly turns into a relationship filled with intensity, insecurity, and complicated choices. The appeal is obvious. It has glossy visuals, dramatic tension, attractive leads, and the kind of romance that feels larger than real life. But beneath the dreamy packaging is a story about projection, wanting someone so badly that the idea of them becomes more powerful than the person themselves. That is why the series works for this list. It is not just soft romance, it is obsession dressed as destiny. And for viewers, that makes it dangerously bingeable. Number 9. Wild Things, 1998. A scandal this glossy should feel cheap. But Wild Things turns trashy temptation into a razor-sharp game of deception. On the surface, it looks like a steamy 90s thriller built around wealth, beauty, accusations, and betrayal in a sunlit Florida town. But the real hook is not the heat. It is the way every character seems to be performing for someone else. Matt Dillon plays a high school counselor pulled into a shocking accusation, while Neve Campbell and Denise Richards become central to a story where truth keeps changing shape. The movie understands one brutal thing about scandal. People do not only hide secrets, they weaponize them. Every twist makes the viewer question who is controlling the room, who is being used, and who is pretending to be weaker than they really are. That is why Wild Things still has cult power decades later. It is not just provocative, it is manipulative, stylish, and shamelessly entertaining. Number 8. Love, 2015. Some films remember romance like a wound, and Love is one of the most uncomfortable examples. Gaspar Noé does not treat relationships like clean stories with heroes and villains. Instead, this art house drama moves through memory, regret, jealousy, emotional addiction, and the damage people cause when passion becomes bigger than responsibility. The story follows Murphy, a man looking back on a turbulent relationship after learning that his former partner may be missing. That structure gives the film a haunted quality, as if every intimate memory has already turned into evidence. It became controversial because of its raw style and unfiltered approach, but the stronger point is emotional. This is not a fantasy about perfect desire, it is a portrait of people confusing intensity with love. The visuals are bold, the pacing is hypnotic, and the mood is heavy with self-destruction. Love is not easy viewing, but it stays in the mind because it feels like regret filmed from the inside. Number 7. Y Tu Mama Tambien, 2001. This road trip starts with youthful arrogance, but ends like a quiet emotional ambush. Alfonso Cuarón's Y Tu Mama Tambien follows two teenage friends and an older woman on a journey across Mexico. But the film is much more than a provocative coming-of-age story. Its real power comes from the tension between freedom and reality. The characters think they are escaping ordinary life, Yet the road slowly exposes class differences, insecurity, friendship, jealousy, and the sadness sitting beneath their jokes. The narration adds another layer, reminding viewers that personal drama never happens in isolation. The country around them is changing too. That is why the film feels richer than a simple romance or road movie. It captures the reckless energy of youth while quietly revealing how fragile that energy really is. By the end, desire becomes less important than what it reveals. Y tu mama tambien is bold, but its lasting impact comes from the ache of growing up too fast. Number 6. Blue is the Warmest Color, 2013. Few modern romantic dramas feel this intimate, this messy, and this emotionally exposed. Blue is the Warmest Color follows Adele through longing, identity, heartbreak, and the overwhelming confusion of first transformative love. The film became internationally famous after winning the Palme d'Or, but its reputation is also complicated, surrounded by debate about performance, realism, and how far cinema should go when portraying private emotion. That tension is part of why people still talk about it. This is not a neat love story with clean lessons. It is a slow, emotional storm where attraction becomes discovery, discovery becomes dependence, and dependence eventually becomes pain. The camera often stays close to faces, making every silence, argument, and glance feel painfully human. For a Netflix list built around mature, controversial romance, this film belongs because it treats intimacy as identity, not decoration. Blue is the Warmest Color is powerful because it understands that the relationships that shape us most are not always the ones that save us. Number 5. Burning Betrayal, 2023. Betrayal does not always break a person. Sometimes it unlocks the version of them that everyone underestimated. Burning Betrayal is a Brazilian thriller that begins with a familiar emotional wound. A woman discovers her fiancé has been unfaithful. But instead of turning into a simple revenge story, the film pushes her into a darker world of reinvention, risk, temptation, and dangerous confidence. Giovanna Lancelotti plays Bobby, an accountant whose controlled life collapses, forcing her to question who she has been living for. Then, a mysterious judge enters the picture, and the story shifts into a glossy maze of attraction, suspicion, and hidden motives. The appeal is not just the romance, it is the fantasy of transformation after humiliation. Viewers understand the anger, the curiosity, and the reckless desire to feel powerful again. That makes Burning Betrayal intensely watchable. It is stylish, dramatic, and pulpy in the best way. A thriller where heartbreak becomes the first step into danger. Number 4. Lady Chatterley's Lover, 2022. Forbidden romance hits harder when the prison looks like a mansion. Lady Chatterley's Lover is not just a period drama about attraction, it is a story about emotional starvation inside a beautiful cage. Connie Chatterley lives in privilege, but her marriage has become cold, distant, and suffocating after her husband returns from war changed forever. The estate is grand, the clothes are elegant, and the social rules are polished, yet everything around her feels lifeless. Then she meets Oliver Mellers, the gamekeeper, and the film slowly turns desire into a rebellion against class, duty, and silence. What makes this adaptation compelling is how it frames intimacy as awakening, not scandal for its own sake. Connie is not simply chasing danger, she is trying to feel alive in a world that has reduced her to a title, a wife, and an heir-producing expectation. The romance carries risk because crossing class boundaries in that world is not a small mistake. It is social destruction. Lady Chatterley's Lover works because it makes forbidden love feel political, emotional, and deeply personal. It is elegant, passionate, and quietly furious. Number 3. Mea Culpa, 2024. The most dangerous client is the one who knows exactly how to blur the line between truth and temptation. Mea Culpa pulls its tension from a classic thriller setup. A defense attorney takes on a murder case involving a charismatic artist, and suddenly, every professional boundary starts to shake. Kelly Rowland plays Mia, a lawyer already trapped inside family pressure, marital frustration, and public expectation. Then Zaire enters the story, with charm, mystery, and the kind of confidence that makes everyone question what he is hiding. The film leans into glossy psychological drama, where attraction becomes another piece of evidence and every conversation feels like it may be part of a larger manipulation. Its strength is not that it is subtle. Its strength is that it knows exactly what kind of pulpy, dangerous fantasy it wants to be. Viewers are not just watching a legal case, they are watching a woman pulled between discipline and impulse, loyalty and suspicion, image and desire. Mea culpa belongs high on this list because it turns seduction into a courtroom trap. By the end, the real question is not who is guilty, it is who controlled the story first. Number 2, Fair Play, 2023. A promotion should be good news, unless it turns love into a battlefield. Fair Play is one of the sharpest psychological thrillers on this list because it understands that modern relationships can collapse without a single affair, murder, or obvious betrayal. Sometimes all it takes is success. Phoebe Dynevor and Alden Ehrenreich play Emily and Luke, a secretly engaged couple working at the same ruthless hedge fund. When Emily gets the promotion Luke expected, their private romance begins to rot under professional humiliation, jealousy, insecurity, and wounded pride. The film is tense because it feels painfully believable. It turns boardrooms, apartments, and late-night conversations into pressure chambers where every compliment sounds suspicious and every silence feels loaded. What starts as ambition becomes emotional warfare. Fair Play is not just about workplace power. It is about what happens when love cannot survive comparison. That makes it more disturbing than many flashier thrillers. It exposes a brutal truth. Some relationships only look equal until one person rises faster. Stylish, icy, and brutally uncomfortable, Fair Play is the kind of film that makes viewers argue about who really destroyed the relationship. Number 1, 365 Days Trilogy, 2020 to 2022. No Netflix romance on this list caused more debate, outrage, curiosity, and secret viewing than the 365 Days Trilogy. It became a global talking point because it mixed luxury fantasy, crime world danger, obsessive attraction, and controversy into one impossible-to-ignore package. The story follows Laura and Massimo, whose relationship begins with a premise that many viewers found deeply troubling. And that is exactly why the trilogy cannot be discussed like a normal romance. It is glossy, dramatic, excessive, and built around emotional extremes rather than healthy love. Expensive locations, designer lifestyles, intense confrontations, and constant power struggles made it bingeable but also heavily criticized. That tension is the reason it sits at number 1. People did not just watch 365 Days because they approved of it. Many watched because they wanted to understand why it became so massive. It represents the dangerous side of streaming-era desire, where fantasy, controversy, and shock value collide. For a YouTube countdown, this is the perfect final entry because it opens debate instantly. Is it seductive escapism, toxic fantasy, or proof that audiences cannot resist forbidden stories? Whatever the answer, Netflix viewers definitely did not ignore it. So which Netflix movie on this list felt the most dangerous? The forbidden romance, the psychological power game, or the controversial obsession everyone secretly talked about? Drop your pick in the comments and tell us which title should have ranked higher. Like, subscribe, and stay close, because the next list goes even deeper into the movies people watch, but rarely admit.